Test, test. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our council meeting for Wednesday, February the 8th, 2023. I want to welcome you. Our first item is a call to order at 7 p.m. and we'll start with our land acknowledgement. Penetangwishing respectfully acknowledges that we are on the traditional treaty territory of the Anishinaabe people and their ancestors, now known as the Williams Treaties First Nations territory. This includes Chippewa Tri-Council, comprised of Bosley First Nation, Rama First Nation, and the Georgina Island First Nation, Alderville, Curve Lake, Hiawatha, and Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nations. Also once home of the Huron-Wendat, and more recently the historic settlement of the Métis, Penetangwishing is now home to many Indigenous peoples. Penetangwishing is proud of its Indigenous name, and more importantly, that for thousands of years it has been and will continue to be an important homeland and gathering place for Indigenous people. We recognize that we are the stewards and caretakers of these lands and waters, and we're responsible to ensure that our mother, the earth, is here for future generations. So I meant to say this a minute ago, if we can silence our phones, we get a little bit of feedback on our live streaming on YouTube. So if you could silence your phones, we would appreciate that. I'll ask council if we can stand. I'll ask Councillor Marchand if you could lead us off with our council commitment, please. Thank you, Councillor Marchand. And Councillor Vedbunker, if you could lead us in the English version.
Thank you. We are grateful for the many gifts which have been bestowed on Penetangwishing and its citizens, including the gifts of freedom, opportunity, and peace that we enjoy. May we be worthy custodians of all that has been entrusted to us. We ask that all in attendance and those that cannot be here assist us in promoting good government. May our decisions as members of council be enlightened, and may we be all strengthened in our awareness of our duties and responsibilities. May we be granted the wisdom, knowledge, will, and understanding to preserve the good fortune of the town for the benefit of all, and to make good laws and wise decisions. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you, Councillor Vedbunker. Number 4 is our approval of the agenda. It's recommended the agenda of the regular council meeting for February the 8th, 2023 be approved as presented. Mover, Deputy Mayor LaRose. Seconder, Councillor Roux. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor? And opposed? That is carried. Number 5, any declaration of pecuniary interest either now or at the time by any members of council? Seeing none. 6, a statement of members. So new thing our council started at the start of this term. Just an opportunity to share some things with the community. I'll just start off. Start of this month, I was joined with our Madam Clerk tonight. We had some students from James Keating. I'm so glad to see some youth here tonight, which we get to celebrate your success. But James Keating, grade 5 class, was here and got to ask a lot of questions of staff and what the municipal sector does. So we really appreciate that opportunity. There's been a lot of conversation about the work we're doing to bridge the gap on our funding piece with CNCC. We have met with our member of provincial parliament a couple of times. Last week, the deputy mayor was also at a meeting with our local mayor. So we're continuing that conversation. And with that, I'll pass it to, I think, Councillor LaRue. Good. Councillor Marchand.
I would just want to say that I'm excited to be presenting and celebrating some really great accomplishments in our community from both our local hockey teams and our local schools. So this is really a great opportunity. I do want to highlight that on Sunday during one of our Penetang games, my son is U18. Our coach took the liberty to honor the 05s who were playing their last official home game as a Penetang Flame, and they were piped in by one of the dads who plays the bagpipes, and all their former coaches were there, and it was a really great send-off. And just kudos to Penetang Minor Hockey and just really representing our small town and really making hockey and putting us on the map for that. So I'm really proud and excited about some of the presentations tonight.
Thanks, Councillor Marshall. Councillor Vedabunker.
Thank you, Worship. I don't have anything to offer tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. As you indicated, we did have a meeting with our MP Jill Dunlop on Friday and the other mayors to put that through. That was about the only excitement we had this week. The only other thing I would remind everybody in the room that it is Winterama weekend coming. So be out there, be prepared, and have some fun.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Durush.
Thank you so much. As chair of the Community Wellbeing Committee, I would like to officially announce that the 2023 Senior of the Year Award nominations are open. So do you know of a great senior member in our community? I think we all do. So certainly feel free to nominate them for the 2023 Senior of the Year Award. To be eligible, the person must be a current resident of the town of Penetanguishene. They have to have contributed to the enrichment of the social, cultural, or civic life of the community after the age of 65 and made their community a better place to live. And they cannot be a previous recipient of the award. Exclusions, self-nominations, and individuals who have passed away, and those currently holding political office or achievements related to a political appointment. So deadline for nominations are Friday, March 31st. Please check our website, penetanguishene.ca, for more details. And we look forward to receiving whole pile to rifle through. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Durush. Councillor Waters.
I don't really have a lot to tell people. I've been outside of my meetings. I probably do, 10, 15 hours a week. I am open for anybody needs to or wants to talk to me. I'm free, easy to contact, and I can do whatever I can to help you.
Thank you, Councillor Waters. CO Jeff Lees.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just two quick things. Really, as it relates to commendations, one is the budget, and I realize council will be entertaining it tonight, but lots of hard work went into that. And I want to thank our finance team and our senior leadership team and staff throughout the organization that played a role in that to deliver a fiscally responsible budget. The second piece is, as has already been noted, Winterama is on our heels, and there's a tremendous amount of work that gets put into that event from a planning perspective. Sherry and Marla and their team in RCS, as well as many other departments that support them, do a tremendous job. So we're excited to see how Winterama is bigger and better than any prior year. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, CO Lees. Moving on, number 7 is our public meeting. This is a public meeting tonight under Section 34 of the Planning Act to consider an application for zoning bylaw amendment to the town zoning bylaw 2000-02. The application is for removal of the holding symbol for the property at 284 Watson Road. To council, the purpose of this public meeting is to provide an opportunity for the public to make comments. The purpose of this public meeting is not to engage in debate regarding the merits of the application, nor it's intended to be a question and answer session. There's an opportunity later in the meeting to ask questions on the applications after the public meeting has concluded. I'll turn to our director, Andrea. If you can introduce the application for us, Andrea, and let us know about any notifications and correspondences received on this application, please. And if you can outline that for us.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, members of council and the public. As noted, this is a public meeting under the Planning Act, and it is to remove the holding symbol from the property at 284 Watson Road. Notice of tonight's public meeting was issued on January 20th to property owners within 120 meters of the subject property, as well as to required agencies, and no comments have been received. The property is designated, a couple designations. It's shoreline area, environmental protection, and rural in the town's official plan. And under the zoning bylaw 2000-02, it is a limited service residential and rural zone with that holding symbol. The holding symbol is placed on properties in order to confirm that technical merits have been addressed through an application. In this case, the property owner has demonstrated that both the septic and the well on the property that support the existing single detached dwelling are both meeting the requirements of the building code and other legislation. So at this point, the town could consider lifting the holding symbol, which will enable the property to do renovations or conduct renovations on the property.
Thank you, Andrea. Andrea, do we know if the applicant or the agent is here to comment on the file?
I believe that the agent is on Zoom.
Okay.
I think they were just going to be listening in. And if there was any questions to be directed to them, I'm sure they could, either myself or them could manage it. But I
Okay.
don't believe they were going to give a presentation tonight. Oh,
So if you have comments for the public, if you wish, you can have the floor at the podium and you're welcome to address anyone. Okay, thank you. If there's anyone in the audience who wishes to make comments on this application based on the land use planning issues relevant to the application, I ask you come forward to the podium and state those now. Seeing none, I'm going to thank everyone for their attendance and participation and close this public meeting. And I'm going to turn now to council and allow council any questions or comments regarding this application. Seeing none. I'm going to go to 7A, which is our zoning bylaw amendment, removal of the holding symbol for 284 Watson Road. It's recommended that the zoning bylaw amendment ZA 1-2023 to remove the holding symbol H symbol for the property municipally known as 284 Watson Road be approved, and the council pass a bylaw to amend the current in effect zoning bylaw 2000-02 as amended to enact ZA 1-2023. And further, the council pass a bylaw to amend the new comprehensive zoning bylaw 2022-17 that is not yet in effect to enact ZA 1-2023. I need a mover. Councillor Leroux, seconder, Councillor Vadabunker. Any further discussion on this? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor? And opposed? And that is carried. 8 is our deputations and presentations. I'll go over to the podium for this. And our first one, I'll see if Councillor Vadabunker and if Councillor Marchand, if you can join me, I'd appreciate that. Oh, good. So good evening, everybody. We're here to recognize. We good? We're here to recognize several youth members in our community. Students from Burkeville School here in Penetanguishene participated in a new national space competition offered by Let's Talk Science, an aerospace corporation, Avalon Space, with the support of the Canadian Space Agency. Over 3,500 youth from across Canada participated in the national competition. Winners of the competition had the opportunity to virtually control a lunar rover in a moon-like environment, allowing them to interact with technology that'll be part of Canada's upcoming space mission. The classes completed a mission simulation by working as a team to drive the rover and seek out ice deposits in a mock lunar landscape. Canadian Sys designed the rovers controlled by the winning teams. They recently received the contract from the Canadian Space Agency to build Canada's first lunar rover to be sent to the moon as early as 2026. The Lunar Rover Research Challenge allowed students to collaborate and develop a mission for lunar exploration. A panel of expert judges evaluated the submissions and determined the winners, the Earthlings from Burkeville Protestant Separate School in Penetanguishene. So we'll invite Grace Larma to come on up. Maeve Parent. Ariana Lynn. Jaden, sorry, my bad. And Ava. And Austin, I might butcher this, but we'll do Austin. How's that? Dan and Bill. So I'll ask Deputy Mayor and Councillor Waters if you can join me. So congratulations to Burkeville School, your students and our student nominees are here tonight. So great work putting us on the map, and you'll be our next space explorers from the town of Penetanguishene, which is pretty exciting. So our second group that we're going to recognize this evening is our local PMHA U13 hockey team. Councillor Marchand spoke out about a little bit of this. So I took some of this from their website today that was probably a lot longer, so I had to take some of the words, but there's a lot of great work that's been done here as well. So the Penetang Flames Paul Watson SOU 13 team won the International Silver Stick competition a couple weeks ago, becoming the first U13 Pee Wee Flames team in 49 years to win this tournament. The team joins the 1973 and 1974 Flames as the only teams to win at this age group in Penetang Minor Hockey Association history. Throughout the tournament, the Flames never trailed, scoring first in all 5 games and finishing with a perfect record of 5 wins and 0 losses, outscoring their opponents 37-4. The team began the tournament by facing off against the Kincardine Canucks, ranked number 1 and number 2 in the province. The Flames wasted no time in getting the tournament started in style, scoring just 17 seconds into the game. The next game for the Flames was against Montgomery Ice Devils from Maryland, USA. The Flames' passing and team speed was too much for the Ice Devils, and the Flames came away with a 10-0 victory. The third game for the Flames went much the same as the second one. The Fort Collins Junior Eagles from Colorado played a physical, feisty style, but the Flames' puck movement and skill allowed them to walk away with their second straight shutout, 9-0. The fourth and final game of the round robin pitted the Flames against Mount Bridges Cougars. Both teams were 3-0 heading into the game, and a berth in the tournament's finals was on the line. In the end, the Flames left no doubt playing a near-flawless match to handily beat the Cougars 8-1 and earn a spot in the finals, forcing the Cougars and the Canucks to face each other and play in game the next day. With their spot in the finals secured and a bye in hand, the Flames had the opportunity to take a break and enjoy the city in Sarnia. On Saturday night, they could attend a game between the OHL Sarnia Sting and the Kitchener Rangers. Thanks to local connections with the Sting, the team could go behind the scenes of the arena and meet with some of the players, including World Junior Gold medalists. Midland resident and Sarnia Sting GM Dylan Sika arranged a special dressing room visit, as well as a Penetang Flame alumni, which had a nice touch by the ex-NHL goaltender Patrick DeRush. Thank you to Pat and Dylan's efforts for the players and their families had an unforgettable experience. The following day, the Flames faced off against Kincardine in the tournament's final game. Both teams were full of excitement and nerves. A rematch of their first game of the tournament. The Flames knew the difficulty of beating a team twice in the same tournament, but with a stellar defensive game, the Flames were victorious in the final game. This was the first International Silver Stick Championship for Penetang Minor Hockey since 2017-18, and the 18-19 U15 Bantam team proudly won back-to-back titles and the 8th overall in PMHA history. The Flames finished with 6 players in the top 10 of the tournament for scoring. As well, the Flames goalies were the 2 top goalies in the tournament. The tournament all-star team was selected by the International Silver Stick Committee with included 4 of the Penetang Flames. So we'll ask Councillor Waters and Councillor Rose help out with some awards. So we want to recognize the goalie, one of the goalies, Spencer Graham. Grayson Ward. Stuart Demonic. Ray Dio. Brady Ridsdale. Simon Chicoine. Noah Homick. Landon Froud. Carter Morrison. Brody Cannell. Owen Homick. Noah Robitaille. Boyd Giroux. And our second goalie, KJ Dunn. And not like our Burkeville group and everything that happens in the community. It requires, leaders in the community, volunteers, our teachers to make this all happen. I think it's important that our players and our parents and our community recognize our volunteers. So a special appreciation thanks to coaches and volunteers as well. So we'll ask for Dwayne Homick to come on up. And Aaron Dion. Aaron's not here. Okay. Mike Demonic. Come on, we'll get a picture of that up there. Cal Johnson. Sean Ridsdale. Doug Ward. Kathy Watson.
Thanks, Sue. That was so nice.
That's awesome. And just like that, council chambers is empty. No one was interested in the budget. They just want certificates and candy. Which we didn't give any candy. All right, thank you, council. Moving on is 9, adoption of the minutes not already confirmed. We have a couple. 9A, we have council for January the 11th, 2023. Special council, January 11th, 2023. That the following minutes of council meetings be confirmed and adopted as circulated. A mover, please. Councillor Marchand, a seconder. Councillor Vadabunker. Any discussion about these minutes? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor? And opposed? That is carried. 10 is a presentation consideration of report for committee of the whole. And we'll start with RCS, Recreation Community Services. I'll turn it to Chair Councillor Waters. If you want to make a quick presentation about your committee report. Yep. Councillor Waters, it's good. We'll look for a mover and a seconder for the committee of recommendations from committee of the whole report for January 11, 2023 for Recreation Community Services. A mover? Councillor Marchand, a seconder. Deputy Mayor LaRose. Anybody have any want to pull on that item? Any further discussion? Call for the vote. All in favor? And opposed? That is carried. Next, we'll turn to Planning and Development Services section. I'll turn it to our chair, Councillor Vadabunker, if you want to do a presentation on that report.
Thank you, Worship. The following are the highlights from the January 11th Planning and Community Services section. Section is recommending that council receive the staff report dealing with the Planning and Community Development Department 2022 year-end summary. Highlights of this report include 4 residential subdivisions were registered compared to the normal average of 1 per year. 34 applications for planning approvals were processed compared to 55 in 2021 and 31 in 2020. 244 building permits were issued compared to 167 in 2021 and 170 in 2020. 70 new dwelling units were created, including townhomes and apartments. $30 million of new construction was undertaken last year. The number of planning and building applications continues to demonstrate consistent growth in the town. Residential development and redevelopment continues to be the largest driver of development, and section is anticipating that 2023 will be another busy year. Section is recommending that council adopt a proposed pre-servicing policy. This is a new policy for the town and will guide staff and developers when developers wish to pre-service their properties prior to final approvals being granted. Section is recommending that council add 3 new referral items for staff to report back on. A review of suggested amendments to bylaw 2012-13, a bylaw to prohibit the dumping or depositing of litter on lands or highways related to leaf collection. A review of bylaw 2012-66, the open air burning bylaw, and a review of the request from the Ganaraska Hiking Trail Association request to approve the completion of the missing trail link within the town of Penetanguishene. On behalf of Planning and Community Development Services section, I ask that council approve the recommendations in this report. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Vadabunker. I'll look for a mover. I suspect Councillor Vadabunker is moving that report. Look for a seconder. Councillor Darush. Any further comments or questions regarding that committee report from anyone? Call for the vote. All in favor? And opposed? That is carried. We're going to move to our recommendations regarding transportation environmental services section. I'll turn it to Councillor Marchand for a committee report if you can.
Yep, my report will be brief. We only had one item under the consent agenda, and it was the minutes from the December 17th, 2021 Drinking Water Quality Management System. And it was a annual report and management report that was provided. That was it for us.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Got a motion that the recommendations contained within the committee of the whole report regarding transportation environmental services section be approved. Look for mover, Councillor Marshall, second, or Councillor LaRue. Any further comments or questions regarding this item? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor? And opposed? That is carried. And the next section is regarding finance and corporate services section. I'll turn it to Councillor Marshall for a committee report on FCS.
Thank you, Councillor DeRush. Thank you. Marcia, that's okay. No, no worries. Been worse. I'll call it a lot worse than that. So my, the finance and corporate section update is very light. There were no consent agenda items, nor were there matters to be considered. The section did, however, recommend that council add one new referral item for staff's future input, and that is regarding Swift broadband, which would, of course, provide internet connectivity for the community in outlying areas. That wraps it up for us. So on behalf of the Finance Corporate Services, I do ask that council approve the recommendation in this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor DeRush. Appreciate that. So we have a recommendation that contained within the committee the whole report regarding the finance and corporate service section be approved. I think I have a mover with Councillor DeRush. Look for a seconder. Councillor Marshall. Any further comments or questions regarding this motion? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor? And opposed? That is carried. Thank you for that. Number 11 is presentation consideration reports regarding special committees. We have a special committee of the whole report for January 25th, 2023. It's recommended that the recommendations contained within the special committee of the whole report relating to finance and corporate service section be approved. I'll look for a mover, please. Councillor DeRush, looking for a seconder. Councillor LaRue. Any members wish to speak to this item? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor? And opposed? And that is carried. 12 is our consent agenda. We have two items on the consent agenda for this evening. It's recommended the following consent agenda items having been given due consideration be received for information. 12A is a memo to council regarding the 2023 final budget draft, and B is a memo to council regarding the revised pre-servicing policy 001-2023. Do any members wish to pull any of these for further comments and discussion? Councillor DeRush.
Yes, I would like to pull 12A, please, and thank you.
Any member wish to pull any the other item? Okay, we'll vote on the 12B as it is. I already read the motion, so I'll look for a mover. Deputy Mayor LaRose, seconder. Councillor Vadabunker. Further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor? And opposed? That is carried. And over to you, Councillor DeRush, regarding the memo to council regarding the 2023 final budget.
Thank you very much. As Chair of Finance and Corporate Services and on behalf of Deputy Mayor LaRose as Vice Chair, I would like to thank Council for approving the town's 2023 operating and capital budgets totaling 19.6 million and the 2024 capital budget of 4.4 million. Our goal was to develop a budget that maintained or enhanced the service levels that our residents enjoy, focus on key areas that the public identified as priorities, such as roads, infrastructure, and keep the tax rate increase at a reasonable level. This was done through input from the public, council and management through the town's online budget survey, 2 public consultations, and 4 special committee of the whole budget meetings. I'm pleased to advise that the town has maintained a high level of investment in our roads and related infrastructure. Increased investment in our sidewalks and roads, as well as asset management plan funding for long-term asset replacement, was a very high priority for council. The 2023 and 2024 capital investments totaling $3.2 million for roads and related projects, which is 32% of the 2-year total capital investment of $10 million. Grants and subsidies will offset this by $1.1 million, reducing the financial impact on our taxpayers. Some notable capital projects to be completed in 23 and in 2024 include reconstruction of Harriet Street, Edward to Jeffrey, preventative maintenance resurfacing on Robert Street East and West, intersection upgrades at Fuller Avenue and Robert Street East, Peel Street redesign, intersection engineering and design at Dufferin, Burke, and Robert Street East, Navy Lane drainage improvements, housing and green housing community improvement plan, town gateway reconstruction, Martin Valley Park development, and library lower level development. Council has approved a $14 million total operating budget that maintains service levels and provides service level enhancements in key areas identified through our service delivery review and council priorities through the budget process. Upgrading technology, online services, and communications will continue in 2023. Youth recreation programming continues to be a priority with free public skating and our recreation subsidy program for low-income families. Included in the total operating budget is net policing costs of $2 million after being reduced using our tax stabilization reserve. Also included in the 2023 total operating budget is $4.5 million for the water, wastewater, and building department rate supported divisions. The 2023 budget results in a total increase of 4% on the municipal portion of the tax bill, or about $41.39 per $100,000 of typical residential assessment. The overall tax impact estimate is 3.5% or $51.16 per $100,000 of typical residential assessment for municipal, county, and provincial taxes. Based on new assessment growth in the county, it is anticipated that this may be reduced even further when the county and province set their tax rates in March. I'm extremely pleased with the 2023 budget process to get to this point. There was a lot of good discussion around the table as we debated the financial decisions before us. In the end, I feel this budget enhances our core municipal functions and infrastructure, supports our staff, reduces debt, continues to reduce the impact from policing costs while keeping the overall tax rate below the current rate of inflation. In closing, I would like to thank council and staff, Carrie Robiar, our Director of Finance Treasurer, the CAO, and all of the management team for the significant time and effort that was spent in the preparations, budget discussions, and finalizing of our 2023 budget. I look forward to working with the team over the next 4 years. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Drush. Any members have any further comments or questions regarding this item that Councillor Drush pulled for comment this evening? Seeing none, Councillor Drush, could I get you to move this item and then we'll look for seconder? Okay, mover, Councillor Drush. Seconder, Councillor Roux. Any further comments or questions regarding this second item? We'll call for the vote. All in favor? And opposed? And that is carried. And now that we've approved the budget, I'll just close by stating thanks to Jeff, thanks to you, Carrie, and the entire senior team. And I want to thank you, Councillor Roux, in your previous council term. With fairness, most of the heavy lifting was done by our previous council. We just finished it off. But thank you to you and Councillor Vedabunker and Deputy Mayor for your work on last term and bringing this to a finality. So thank you to everyone in your role. Council has approved a $24 million budget for 2023 operating and capital and our 2024 capital investment. This will allow us to continue to deliver a high level of service that our residents deserve and to focus on investing in our infrastructure over the next 2 years. We certainly appreciate the community's involvement and the input received during the budget process. Ongoing communication with the residents and making them feel heard is definitely a priority for this council. You have your hand?
I did, Your worship.
Thank you, Councillor Vedabunker. We're moving on to 13, which is matters for consideration. First is 13A, terms of reference regarding the Town Dock Technical Advisory Committee of Council, PL 2023-07. It's recommended that terms of reference for the Town of Penetanguishene Town Dock Technical Advisory Committee be approved in accordance with staff report PL 2023-07. I'm looking for a mover, please. Councillor Vedabunker, a seconder. Councillor Waters. Comments or questions regarding this? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. I was quite surprised to see this on our agenda is that it has not gone through the process that normally it does when it comes to us. So we have not had a chance at section to go over it, nor has council had a chance to go over it at a committee of the whole meeting. So I would like to make a motion that this be deferred.
Okay, we have a motion that this item is deferred. Do we have a seconder for this motion? Councilor LaRue. Madam Clerk, is there any discussion on this motion, or do we go right to a vote for clarity? I believe it's just a vote.
I think you guys can just vote on that item. Yeah.
Thanks, Kelly. We have a mover and seconder to defer this item. We'll call for the vote. All in favor? And opposed? That is carried. B is secure. This is a long one. So before I read this one, this was a discussion we had at committee of the whole last time. I'll just ask if there's any discussion, comments, or concerns with this, and then I'll read the motion. And Councilor's look is like, I want to change the third word. Okay. It's recommended, whereas the town of Penetanguishene, as a member of the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Cities Initiative, supports protecting source water, planning for climate change impacts and shoreline resilience, ensuring safe and affordable water services for all of our residents, and building up a sustainable blue economy in the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence River Basin. Whereas ensuring healthy communities and a strong economy for Canadians depend on securing Canada's source water, which includes addressing water quality issues, contaminants, and pollution, supporting biodiversity and reversing wetland and fish and wildlife, habitat loss, and improving community knowledge to empower citizens to safeguard this essential resource. Whereas a freshwater action plan and the Great Lakes Protection Initiative it supported were first announced in the 2017 Canadian federal budget with a $44.84 million investment over 5 years. Whereas the Freshwater Action Plan has combined science and action to address priorities in the Great Lakes, such as preventing toxic and nuisance algae, enhancing the resilience of coastal wetlands in the Great Lakes, restoring Great Lakes areas of concern, and supporting Canada's commitments under the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement, among other priorities. Whereas a commitment was made by the Liberal Party of Canada in the 2021 federal election to strengthen the Freshwater Action Plan with a historic investment of $1 billion over 10 years to restore and protect large lakes and river systems, starting with the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence River Basin. Whereas the federal government only committed $19.6 million in funding in the 2022 budget for the Freshwater Action Plan, falling short of the aforementioned commitment. Whereas the United States has invested $1.8 billion in the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative since 2017, and will see accelerated funding with the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Whereas a 2018 University of Michigan study shows that for every dollar of federal spending on GLRI projects between 2010 and 2016 yielded $3.35 in additional economic activity. Whereas nearly half of Canada's population lives in the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence River Basin, a region that will continue to see accelerated growth, resulting in greater land and resource use pressures that will further contribute to water availability and quality issues. Whereas the Stockholm Resilience Center recently identified the importance of wetlands as carbon sinks and freshwater role in climate mitigation. Whereas the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Collaborative outlined 30 recommendations to Environment and Climate Change Canada as part of a 10-year, $2.2 billion action plan from 2020 to 2030 to protect the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence, addressing shoreline erosion, outdated infrastructure, invasive species, exposure to toxins, beach contamination, following an 18-month consultation with First Nations, academics, and other experts. Whereas the recommendations outlined in Action Plan 2020-2030 should serve as the basis of programming for strengthened federal action in the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence River Basin through a strengthened Freshwater Action Plan. Whereas the newly established Canada Water Agency should play a role in accelerating the rollout of funding made available through a strengthened Freshwater Action Plan. Whereas Freshwater Action Plan funding should largely be directed to community groups, local governments, and First Nations to ensure that investments made will have the biggest local impact and empower action at the local level, rather than being held back for federal administration and operations. Whereas it is critical to implement a strengthened freshwater action plan, including accelerating a $1 billion over 5 years and to creating a Canada Water Agency to consolidate and coordinate federal water efforts and support provinces and territories in addressing systemic issues impacting the viability of the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence River Basin and the communities dependent upon the region's source water. Now therefore be resolved that the town of Penetanguishene calls on the federal government to commit $1 billion in funding over 5 years for a strengthened freshwater action plan in budget 2023. Be it further resolved that the town of Penetanguishene calls on the federal government to guide its freshwater action plan funding to implement recommendations in the action plan 2020 to 2030. Be it further resolved that the town of Penetanguishene calls on the federal government to direct priority funding under the strengthened freshwater action plan to projects in the Great Lakes and the St. Lawrence River Basin. Be it further resolved that the town of Penetanguishene call on the federal government to make municipalities eligible for future funding and programs announced under the strengthened freshwater action plan. Be it finally resolved that the town of Penetanguishene directs its staff to submit this resolution to the federal deputy prime minister and minister of finance, the minister of environment and climate change, the parliamentary secretary to the minister of environment and climate change, responsible for the Canada Water Agency, and our local member of parliament. A mover. Councillor Vadabonker, a seconder. Councillor Waters. Is there any comments or questions regarding this? Councillor LaRue.
Just a comment, Your Worship. Thank you. Back when a number of years ago, the town of Penetanguishene was a member of the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence cities, and for some reason or other, we got away from it, and we lapsed in being our membership. And through the last term, with myself and Deputy Mayor, former Deputy Mayor Dubo, we were able to bring it back on board, and I'm pleased to say that we're very pleased that we're still members of the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence cities.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. I would agree and echo that. And I know myself and the CEO was on a call 2 weeks ago regarding this, and I'd echo your sentiment about that. So it's a great initiative and great leadership on our part. Any other member have any further comments or questions regarding this declaration? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor and opposed? And that is carried. 14 is motions of which notice has been previously given. We have none. 15 is notices motion. A, we have one. And just for clarity for everyone, this motion is simply just read this evening. There's not discussed, debated. It'll be brought forward at our next council of next day. So this isn't something we'll be discussing tonight. We have a notice of motion under 15A. It's regarding the Economic Development Corporation of North Simcoe. It's moved by Mayor Rawson and seconded by Deputy Mayor LaRose. Whereas the town of Penetanguishene is a shareholder and founding partner of the Economic Development Corporation of North Simcoe, EDCNS, and whereas the town of Penetanguishene has contributed financially to EDCNS annually, and whereas the current governance board of EDCNS has upwards of 15 board members and only one appointee from each municipality, that the town of Penetanguishene directs the CEO to freeze any grants and funding to the EDCNS until the satisfaction of the EDCNS board and council of the town of Penetanguishene of the following. 1, review and implement a new realignment of the governance structure that reflects the municipality's funding to EDCNS. Provide a clearly defined strategic plan with key enablers, metrics, and accountabilities that reflect the funding municipality's priorities, which has been adopted by the new governance structure. 3, provide a fully costed operating budget that aligns with the strategic plan and adopted by the new governance structure. 4, that the new governance structure, strategic plan, and operating budget be presented to Penetanguishene Council. The EDCNS has 6 months to complete these milestones to the Penetanguishene Council satisfaction. Upon successful completion of the governance structure, strategic plan, and operating budget, that the CEO will be directed to release the operating grant. And that if the governance structure, strategic plan, and operating budgets are not endorsed by council, that notice is provided on the town of Penetanguishene withdrawal from EDCNS. Again, that's not for discussion or debate, it's just there for notice. That'll be brought up at next council. Moving on to the next item, is 16 is consideration of bylaws. 16A, we have a few. We have a bylaw 2023-06, being a bylaw amendment to appoint a fire chief for the town of Penetanguishene. 2023-07 being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw 2000-02 as amended of the Corporation of the Town of Penetanguishene to remove the holding H symbol from 284 Watson Road. We have 2023-08 being a bylaw to amend the comprehensive zoning bylaw in 2022-17 of the Corporation of the Town of Penetanguishene to remove the holding H symbol from 284 Watson Road. And that Council of the Town of Penetanguishene introduced the following bylaws: 2023-06, 2023-07, 2023-08, and that the bylaws be read a first time, be deemed to be read a second time, a third time, and carried. I'll look for a mover, please. Deputy Mayor LaRose, a seconder. Councillor Marshall, any further comment or questions regarding these bylaws as presented? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? And opposed? And that is carried. 17 is our County of Simcoe update. I'm going to turn it to Deputy Mayor for an update regarding the County of Simcoe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to let you know, the mayor and I attended our last county meeting. We were given our assignments for our committees. I believe the mayor is sitting on Economic Development Subcommittee and the Simcoe Housing Corporation. I was assigned to sit on the Planning Advisory Committee as well as the Simcoe County Corporation. So we will both be doing that. The other big news we had at county was our budget. Our budget has been passed at 3.5%. So now Carrie and her crew will be able to get those numbers and everybody can finalize what our actual tax bills are. The other thing, good news that we had there was Sunset Manor, which is one of the 5 long-term care homes, has finished up with all its issues, and they are now intaking residents with 54 long-term beds to fill. So they're going at it at a nice, even manner. They're doing one a day type thing to get everybody on board, and that's a very good thing. So that was our last county meeting.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Anybody have any questions regarding our county update for the Deputy Mayor? Seeing none, thank you again, Deputy Mayor. 18 is a question period from the media and public. Do any members of the media public have any comments or questions for our council this evening? Morgan? You always ask me afterwards. Seeing none, we move to 19, our announcements and inquiries. I'll look to my left again. Councillor Roux, announcements or inquiries?
Well, other than looking forward to our big 75th Winterama, the oldest Winterama or carnival in Ontario, and it's shaping up and looking like it's going to be a good one.
Announcements or inquiries, Councillor Marshall? Councillor Vadabunker?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to make a couple of comments. First of all, I wanted to compliment Councillor DeRush on an excellent presentation of the budget. I thought you covered everything. I had a full page of things I wanted to cover, and your introduction was great. And I also want to thank the staff, our treasurer and the whole leadership team, our CAO, everybody that was involved in the preparation of the budget. It's nice to have the budget done and approved and at a 4% tax rate increase and all the enhancements that Councillor DeRush outlined in her comments. So it's quite a milestone. Here we are in early February and we have our budget done, and now we can get on with the implementation. So my compliments to everybody involved. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Vadabunker. Deputy Mayor, any announcements or inquiries? Councillor DeRush, Councillor Waters. See none. I'll echo everyone else's comments regarding the budget. Thank you to everyone. I especially want to thank our members of the public. We had a lot of feedback and comments brought forward, and I think they were heard, and I think the adjustments were made. So thank you for that. I just want to highlight as well what you brought up, Councillor LaRue. Winterama is fast approaching. We have a lot of great activities. You can find them on our website. There's brochures floating around the town. You can go to winterama.ca. But just to highlight a few things, and there's a whole list of items going on, like you identified, Councillor Roux. We're doing a kickoff at Rotary Park on the Friday, February the 17th at 7 p.m. Fireworks and the like. So we'd like to see everyone there. But there's a pile of events you can find. We have a craft show. We have our Winterama parade, ice fishing, log sawing competition. I believe there's a bit of a competition between mayors and deputies in North Simcoe. We have our polar plunge, the demolition derbies back, cardboard toboggan races. We have puddle jumps, tube rides, snowmobile rides, arm wrestling. The list goes on. So we look forward to finding everyone. I think you mentioned a while ago as well, Councilor Rue, that you've put in order for good weather as well. So let's get everyone out and enjoy the night, the day, the weekend. Let's just enjoy it. Guaranteed. So there you go, Councilor Colvett. We'll move on to number 20, their confirmation bylaw. 2023-09, that the confirmation bylaw 2023-09 be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. I'll look for a mover. Deputy Mayor, seconder, Councilor Rue. Call for the vote. All in favor and opposed? That is carried. And we're looking to adjourn at 7:54. Mover, Councilor Rue, seconder, Councilor Waters. Call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Let's take 6 minutes. We'll reconvene at 8 o'clock for committee of the whole. I got to fill my water bottle. All right, good evening. Council will reconvene back as committee of the whole for Wednesday, February 8th, 2023 at 8 p.m. Two is our approval of the agenda. It's recommended that committee of the whole agenda for February 8th, 2023 be approved as presented. I'm looking for a mover. Councilor Vadabunker, seconder, Deputy Mayor LaRose. Comments or questions regarding the agenda? Call for the vote. All in favor? And opposed? That is carried. 3 is declaration of pecuniary interest, either now or at the time of. Do any members have any declarations of pecuniary interest? Councilor Mershaw.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do have a declaration in section B on the consent agenda under the fee waivers and then matters for discussion under that same section 1 and 2, ice allocation and ice user groups as it relates to Penetang Minor Hockey.
Thank you, Councilor Mershaw. Any other members have any other pecuniary interest? Moving on to 4 presentations, delegations, we have none. 5 is our council information package. We have 2 for January the 18th and 1 for February the 8th of 2023. Do any members wish to pull any of that for further conversation? Councilor Roux?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I would like to pull from January the 18th, 2B, which is the letter Re Circle K.
Thank you, Councilor LaRue. Do any other members have anything they wish to pull? Seeing none, that the council information package dated January the 18th, 2023 and February 2023 having been given due consideration be received for information. So we'll vote on these minus the 2B that Councilor LaRue is looking for. A mover, Deputy Mayor LaRose, seconder, Councilor Mershaw. Further comments or questions? Call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Councilor Roux, over to you for item 2B.
Thank you, Your Worship. Sometime back, I had received a call from Mr. Darren Meisinger in regards to the runaway vehicles from Circle B that, as we know, caused substantial damage to their building. And also we had a second one that lost and went down and created a lot of damage to 2 vehicles, one actually owned by Mr. Castano, who's in the audience tonight. And I suggested to Mr. Meisinger that he forward a letter to yourself, Your Worship, along with the CCs to members of council so that we could probably look at it and deal with it. So I don't know if anything to this point has been done in regards of, staff, or if there's been any response to Mr. Meisinger.
Thank you, Councilor Roux. I see Brian has a comment. I'll turn to you first, COLs. Do you have anything, or over to Brian?
Thank you, Worship. Maybe I'll just make a couple comments and then I'll ask Brian, as our Director of Public Works, to fill in any blanks. We did receive this letter that was addressed to members of council. Staff have not responded to it as it was addressed to members of council, so we would look for some direction from council. We did acknowledge that we received it and that it would be put on the agenda. We've had some discussion internally to do a little bit of exploratory work around, is there a site plan with respect to the subject property? As well as, we do intend and some of this has maybe already occurred and Brian can fill in some blanks, but we do intend on reaching out to the subject property to have some dialogue and conversation about some potential solutions that perhaps the property owner could engage in. We recognize that, we're very fortunate in both of these circumstances that no one was injured or heaven forbid killed. And so as a municipality, we recognize that certainly there's a moral responsibility to play a part, and we want to do that. And we want to work with the subject property. It's until we kind of have had an opportunity to get into the full depth, and I think it's going to be some ongoing conversation with the subject property. At that time, I think we'd be in a good position to report back to council with how those conversations go. Your worship, with your indulgence, perhaps our Director of Public Works wants to add.
Thank you, Salise. Brian.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Leroux. Yes, I have reached out to the operators of the Circle K, and they've indicated to me that they have reached out to their head office about contacting their suppliers, to which this matter relates. And I've given them my contact information, and I'll be following up with them for further conversations with themselves and their head office about some, in addition to the correspondence that they've issued to their suppliers about mitigating these impacts and learning from these incidents, but also doing something a little more permanent on the site about measures that can be put in place on the property to mitigate any accidents going forward.
Thank you. Councillor Roux.
Thank you, Your Worship. Perhaps then, Your Worship, I might suggest that this information be passed on to Mr. Meisinger, either under your pen or the CAO's pen, to just give him an update as to what is taking place and what is happening.
Happy to. Councillor Roux, and do you want to look at, so we'll need a mover to bring this in, or do you want to add something in referrals? Or you just want to leave this with our CEO to circle up in communication?
I think I would just leave it with our CAO to address. Yeah.
Good with that, Jeff? Okay. Councillor Leroux, can you move this item to bring this back in? And a seconder for this? Deputy Mayor Leroux, any further comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor? And opposed? That is carried. Thank you for that. 6A is our Transportation Environmental Services section. I'm going to turn the chair over to you, Councillor Marchand.
Thank you. Okay, so we have before us for the consent agenda. It is recommended that the following consent agenda item having been given due consideration be received for information. The Drinking Water Quality Management Standard Management Review Meeting Minutes for December 5th, 2022. Can I get a mover? Deputy Leroux, seconder, Councillor Durush. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. There are, sorry. My apologies. No matters for consideration this evening. Under referrals to upcoming agenda, that the Transportation and Environmental Services section endorse the following additional and existing referrals to upcoming agendas and staff. Stormwater management practice and engineering standards, that is to be this updated to Q4 of 2022, which we brought to us at Q2 of 2023. Traffic calming measures on roads and sidewalk with a priority of streets with no sidewalks, coming second quarter of 2023. And the County of Simcoe Transit connection service improvements, that is coming forward second quarter of 2023. Motion, can I ask for someone to move that? Councillor Leroux, seconder. Councillor Waters. Questions, comments, any additions? Seeing none, I will call for a motion to vote. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. At this time, any questions from the media or public at this time regarding public works and transportation or transportation and environmental services? Seeing none, that's it for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marcia. And we'll turn to 7B as our Recreation and Community Services section. I'm going to pass the chair over to you, Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Your Worship. For Recreation and Community Services, we'll start with the consent agenda. Tonight, we have 3 items. And that the consent agendas have been given due consideration and received for information. Number 1, fee waiver request 2022 RCS-2023-03. Number 2 would be memo to committee. Read the boat slip weight list for the Penetang priority. Number 3 is a memo to committee regarding the sled heads for kids Guinness World Record event. And I would ask if anyone would like to pull any of these items for. That it. We'll go with our mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to pull item 1 and 2 and speak to those when the time is appropriate.
Okay. Do we have a motion then for the third item? Be our deputy mayor and Councillor DeRush. Vote. Do we have a vote on this item? All in favor? And passed. And the 2 items that we pulled, well, I guess I'll let you talk about it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll start with number 1, the fee waiver request for 2022. I appreciate this report from Sherry. And I think there's a lot of good work that's done here for what we provide community groups and user groups. But it behooves me, though, to see that sometimes we're bringing requests here for council approval for some that I think staff have the power and ability to do. So I would recommend, I believe right now, I'd maybe turn to Sherry or Jeff. I think right now the approval mechanism is $850 that staff can give a fee waiver to a community group such as CERT as example. I think this report's fulsome. It comes in with a lot of great detail. I think it behooves us to increase that from $850 to $1,000. I'd look to make that change to that policy, but maybe some clarity from our CEO about those numbers if I have that right. But this report mechanism basically just informs us of the good work that we do with our community groups. And I think this report's fulsome and provides that input to us in the community, but it's an extra layer of work when at the end of the day, the mechanism is we're going to approve that request. I think this policy is long staying a lot of good work. And with the times, it's time we inflate that a little bit. So I'll look to CEO, see if I'm right at the numbers, and then if you need a motion to adjust that.
Thank you, Your Worship. The policy as it stands today is that staff can approve up to 100% fee waiver to a maximum of $500, which is why you're seeing the CERT request come forward. So my suggestion would be, if Your Worship, if you're suggesting it be increased to 1,000, say, then perhaps a motion can be put on the floor by committee and considered and ratified or not in 4 weeks' time.
So I would move that motion. I think, when we just passed that $23 million budget, I think staff have the knowledge and know-how to use their wisdom, their knowledge and know-how to exercise this policy and stretch this from $500 to $1,000. So I'll move that motion and I'll look for a seconder.
Councillor Marshall, please for a second. And Councillor Bad Bunker.
Yeah, just for clarity. So we have an item on the floor right now, which is the fee waiver request report. So we're dealing with that. And then we have now a motion to amend the policy to increase the staff limit to $1,000. So I'm just wondering in terms of the sequence here. This is committee of the whole, so if this is something that staff will bring back, then an amendment to the policy for a council meeting, is that what next committee of the whole? Yeah, okay. Just, I think we should deal with one and then deal with the other, perhaps. Thank you.
I'm confused now. Where do we want? I'll pass the chair.
So I'm just wondering, with your comments, Councillor Vadaboncourt, that we deal with this as a separate item, as two separate items. And my thoughts would be that the amendment be removed for tonight and it's sent back as a referral item on our section. We'll have a look at it with our director to make sure that they are comfortable moving this from 500 to 1,000. And then it would come back at our next committee. There's no hurry. The total for the year, I believe, Sherry, was like $850 for the whole year. We got lots of time to deal with it.
Yeah,
So
I'm good with that. Thank you.
if the mayor is okay with that, we'll just carry on with our which one was it? Yeah. So we'll just move that the fee waiver request be as is. We'll go with that. We have a mover. Yep. Just for matters for consideration. We still have to have a mover and a seconder since it was pulled. So you're moving that, Mayor Rawson, and seconded by Councillor Vadaboncourt. We'll call for the vote. All in favor, and that is carried. And Billy, we're back to you down to item B, matters for consideration. Oh, did you? Sorry. I didn't remember that. So the second one we have pulled is our boat slip wait list. So what would you like to discuss about it?
It's just a comment. I just appreciate this. I've heard from community members and we heard this during public consultation. And what I'm reading in this policy now is that we're serving our community first. And I appreciate that members outside of our community won't be served first for boat slip at the harbor. And I really appreciate the time and effort staff have done to amend this policy and bring it forward. And I want to thank you for that. Just complimentary comments.
Thank you. We did, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Councillor Vadaboncourt.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I just had a question with respect to the last sentence, or the first sentence in the last paragraph. It has to do with non-Penetanguishene slip renters. And it says, non-Penetanguishene slip renters will be given the opportunity to re-secure slips rented year over year. So they're, what I interpret, that's kind of grandfathered. You know, so if they've done that, then they're grandfathered. And then it goes on to say, and to be added to the wait list behind Penetanguishene residents. So I didn't understand that and to be added. I understand the grandfather part, but I didn't understand the and to be added to the wait list behind Penetanguishene residents.
Cool. We can get you that clarity. Director. Yep. Sherry's ready. Yep.
Thank you for the question through Deputy Mayor LaRose to Councillor Vadaboncourt. So a non-Penetanguishene resident, if they already have a slip at the wharf, then they are given an opportunity to renew their slip and continue to be a customer. They're still given an opportunity to be added to the wait list as well. A non-Penetanguishene resident, we're not talking about the same person, but non-Penetanguishene residents can still be customers of the, become a new customer of the wharf. They would just be added at the bottom of the list behind Penetanguishene residents.
Thank you.
Does that do it? Cool. We did discuss this at section, and we as well, your worship, we were very happy to see that it's our wharf, it's our people. So anybody that's there is more than welcome to be a good boater, a good renter, and that's how the new list will take off. So if we can have a motion to approve number 2, moved by Mayor Rawson, seconded by Councillor LaRue, all in favor, and that is carried. That brings us around to 7B, matters for consideration.
Matters for consideration. We have two items tonight. The first one would be the ice allocation policy. Our recommendation action is that the ice allocation policy, RCS REC-09-2023, formalizing practices and priorities for accessing prime ice time and arena floor time at the Penetanguishene Memorial Community Center, be approved as presented. And I would need a mover. Deputy Mayor, and second by Benita. And what's that? Are there any comments or questions from members of council? Please, Councilor Benita.
Thank you so much. I actually wanted to kudos to the Director Desjardins. Very well done. Good policy. Well thought out and well done. Thank you.
Please. And could we, Councilor Vadabonker?
Thank you. Just a question with respect to the spring summer allocation May to August. Typically that's ball hockey season. So was the ball hockey group consulted, or was this specifically for ice? If somebody wants to run a hockey school or something in the summertime and put ice in, that's the deadline for that request is January 31st.
Through Councillor Waters to Councillor Vadaboncourt. Great question. And the ball hockey group was not consulted on the policy. They are the only current floor user of the arena. I can certainly review the timeline request. So they're not competing for floor time with anyone. They're the only user. The reason for not consulting, but can certainly look at that before bringing it forward to council to be approved as a bylaw.
Thank you.
Okay, our second point would be the ice users group agreement. Well, we have a vote. Let's have a vote. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So now we'll go on to the ice users group agreement. The recommended action is that the draft ice users agreement between the Corporation of the Town of Penetanguishene and the Penetanguishene Minor Hockey Association, the Penetanguishene Skating Club, the North Simcoe Girls Hockey Association, and the Penetanguishene Kings be approved as outlined in the attachment to this report. And also that the CAO and Director of Recreation and Community Services are hereby authorized to make minor alterations to the agreement that do not substantially change its content. And finally, that the clerk bring forward the necessary bylaw for council's approval. Our Mayor?
Just before we get too deep in this, if I can, I believe this is where Councillor Marchand raised a pecuniary interest. I believe this is the item. I have one as well. And what I'm asking council, I'd like to parse out the Pentank Minor Hockey Association conversation and allow council to discuss that, myself and Councillor Marshall. I'll remove myself. I'm sure that's the one Councillor Marshall spoke about. But if council would be willing, I'd like to talk about the remaining, and then we'd remove ourselves and talk about the Pentank Minor Hockey separately, if that's acceptable to the rest of the members of council.
Do we need to move for that? Or do we just? Could we have Deputy Mayor and second by Councillor Vadabonker? And all in favor? Oh, discussion. Okay, let's have a discussion.
Okay. So just for clarity, we're talking about the ICE user groups. We've removed PMHA, so we're talking about the remaining groups. I've got several concerns, not concerns about the agreements per se, but about the process. And here's what I mean. We're in essence going to sign a 3-year agreement with the other groups as listed, except for Pentank Minor Hockey. And my concern is the funding for the arena. And I brought this up several times, specifically regarding our relationship with our partners. And I'm going to bring up Tiny Township as the example. We've had multiple conversations about that. Councillor Vadabunker, I think a little while ago, brought up a motion that we communicate with our friends about having a meeting. The CEO has reached out to the CEO of Tiny about having a conversation, and that's going to happen. The conversations haven't been had, so we don't know what the funding gap looks like. And I'm worried about us passing an agreement that has a potential financial implication to the community when we don't know what that partnership from a revenue standpoint looks like. My concern is we need to be looking out for our community members, no different than boat slip part. So if our neighbors don't want to pay more for the service they get, then we may need to look at leveraging a user fee. And the agreement speaks to providing the residency, number of residency spots that's outside of the town of Penetangwishing. So do we need to levy a fee to these groups that are non-residents? I think that's a conversation we have to think about. But with fairness, I think that complicates all this. I'm hopeful that the CEO, myself, the mayor of Tiny, and our other friends, that we can figure out a way forward. But there's a long history here that's been going on. And I'm worried that if we sign an agreement now for 3 years, we lose the ability to have that conversation. So I'm wondering if we move forward with this agreement, and I'll turn to the CEO, are we bound? If you come to an agreement with the CEO of Tiny, say, and that's June, that may change this perspective of where we need to go from this agreement, because we're in essence signing a 3-year agreement. And I believe our community members shouldn't be subsidizing fees for people outside of our community. And I feel pretty strong about that. And we've had a lot of conversation about that. And I think we got to push hard. So I guess a question maybe to our CEO is, if we sign this now, Jeff, like what options and tools do we have available to us? Because this is a complicated, big issue. And are we in essence tied to this for the next 3 years and we can't go back and reevaluate this? Because with fairness, our dispute from the funding mechanism is a partner to partner. I don't truly believe it affects North Simcoe Girls Hockey Association and Penang Skating Club, but we're signing an agreement and that funding mechanism may directly affect them. And that's my concern. As we sign this agreement, it does affect them. So that's my concern.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So I think I would answer this question. There's a couple different ways or a couple different components I would offer to committee on this particular question. There's 2 clauses in all of the agreements that are consistent, save and except in one of the agreements. Section 10 is a notification clause, which talks about basically that any fee increases will be determined as of the end of March each year to take effect that coming following season. So for example, by the end of March every year, we have to advise our 4 user groups of any fee increases. For the Kings, it's the end of May, I believe, but that probably has something to do with their season goes a little bit beyond March. But nonetheless, that's in an attempt to ensure that our user groups have ample notice and can appropriately plan and budget for fee increases that are going to take place in September. So in short, that clause in each of the agreements, I believe, provides us an ability when there are fee increases vis-a-vis the fees and charges bylaw, for example. If council in future wanted to impose a non-resident user fee, and I'm speculating here lots, but that would be incorporated into our fee and charge bylaw, then we would just need to give notification to our 4 user groups by the end of March that would take effect that coming September, essentially. So that's the first piece. The second piece I would say is in all of the agreements, very consistently, Section 29 is termination of contract. We've got a 60-day clause there that as long as it's done in writing, we can terminate the contract in whole or in part. So should council wish to take a different path than a non-user or a non-resident user fee, for example, that might fall outside of the notification clause, and I don't want to speculate on what that might look like, then council has the opportunity to from a procedural perspective or a process perspective to terminate the contract and then enter into potentially a new contract that may have some modifications that covers what council may wish to do down the road with respect to the subject matter. Hopefully that provides a little bit of clarity. The last piece I would just say, sorry, Mr. Chair, is there is some urgency to get these agreements in place. They do expire the end of March, hence why it's coming to committee this evening and then council on March 8th. But from staff's perspective, we had some dialogue this afternoon, and we believe, despite the fact that there is this kind of ongoing discussion that needs to happen, and that's not an overnight solution as much as we'd all like it to be, that we can still proceed and ensure that we're protecting ourselves with respect to the subject matter. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jeff. Just two quick follow-ups if I can. So from a clarity standpoint, I'm hearing you say the mechanism is through the fee bylaw. So if I'm following right, if we were to give notice by March of 24, that would take effect September of 24, because we missed this year. We won't be able to do it this year. So that's kind of the mechanism I'm hearing you say. And I'm also wondering, is there any substantial changes to this agreement that's here today than what was signed 3 years ago?
Mr. Chair, I'll tackle the first question if I can, and then I'll hand it over to our director for the second question. With respect to the first question, you're spot on. So obviously, I don't think we're going to be in a position by the end of this March, but for March of 2024, for example, as long as we give notice of any fee increases, then they would take effect the following, that next ice season, commencing when the ice goes in, which would be September of 2024. That's the first question, Mr. Chair, and perhaps Madam Director can provide some clarity on the second question.
Thank you. Through to Mayor Rawson. So in the staff report, I've outlined the substantial changes that have happened in the agreements since the last time these were brought forward to council. One is the addition of a smoke-free Ontario clause. The Smoke-Free Ontario Act does not permit smoking not only on recreational facility property, but you have to be 20 meters from the property. It is an ongoing issue. It's not the municipality's responsibility to enforce that law. It is not the user group's responsibility, but we have asked that the groups be cooperative in helping us share information with their members about the Smoke-Free Ontario Act, and they're all supportive and in agreement with that. The second is the inclusion of the ICE allocation policy. So we had a user group meeting with the ICE user groups to explain the policy, the purpose of it, to go through it, to give them opportunity to bring it to their boards and review it with them. So the new agreements have a clause that acknowledges that they've understand that the ICE allocation policy exists and they're required to comply with it. So specific things, as an example, in the policy that now apply to the group is that, if minor hockey is using a certain ice time, they can't call an hour before and say, we're not using the ice, and the municipality doesn't have time to recoup that cost. So there's timelines and stuff for that. And then the third significant change would be that the ice allocation is actually outlined in each policy, in each agreement, which it wasn't before. It was a grandfathered handshake. Do you still want the same time this year as next year? So this time it is specifically outlined in the policy who gets what ice time. So those are the big changes, and they were reviewed with all of the user groups.
Thank you so much. When I looked at these agreements, I thought they were agreements for these user groups, and that's exactly what it's for. What you can do, what you can't do. Here are your ice times so that you can start planning for your upcoming season, and you can start, scheduling games, and you can start doing all of those things that are so important. And this, in that respect, hasn't changed from 20 years when I was involved. We knew what ice we had. We knew that we used what we used and whatnot. So I think the financial piece is a completely separate piece. in my eyes. I think this is about what these groups can expect, what kind of ice time they can have, what the rules are that they need to follow. The financial portion definitely will come down the line, but I don't know that those are hand in hand. So that's why I don't see any difficulty with this agreement. I think they're great for our groups, and I think it's securing. And I agree that when you know what you have, then you plan to use it accordingly. And it'll save us some losses at one point or another, especially at these times of years when teams are falling out of playoffs and we've got some extra ice and nobody wants to practice time. So this kind of seals the deal and secures us financially. So I think it's a great agreement. Thank you.
I guess we need a mover and a seconder. That'll be our deputy mayor and Councillor Durush. And could we have all in favor? And that would be carried. So now we go to the part, that portion. And I don't. Yes.
So we're going to deal with the one that the mayor had pulled. So we have the ice user agreement for PMHA. And just to note that Mayor Rawson and Councillor Marchand will not be participating in the vote as they have declared. So it is the exact same thing that we just talked about, the user group agreements. Everybody was on board. Nothing else has changed. So we'll call for a mover. Councillor Vadaboncourt, second by Councillor Leroux, and we'll call for the vote. All in favor? And that is carried. And that puts it back to you, Bill, for referrals.
I've got a script here, so hopefully we can get through this one. So. So we now have our great page. Move on to referrals for the upcoming agenda and staff. Does anybody want to add or remove anything from the existing list? Seeing none, we'll read the motion. Being that the Recreation and Community Service section endorsed the following additions and existing referrals to upcoming agendas and staff. The Bee City Canada, the Dog Park Fencing Height, the Champlain Cultural Event, Communities in Bloom, and the Ganoreska Hiking Trail Association request to blaze a trail. Do I have a mover? Councillor Leroux and seconder. Deputy Mayor. All in favor? And that would be carried. And we'll now move on to questions from the media and the public, if there's any questions. Seeing none, I'll pass the chair back to the mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Waters. 8C is our Planning and Community Development Services section. I'm going to turn the chair over to Councillor Vadaboncourt.
Thank you, Worship. So turning to section 8 on your committee of the whole agenda, we have one consent item, and the recommended action is the following consent agenda items having been given due consideration be received for information. Memo to committee, monthly municipal law enforcement activity report, January 2023. Any comments on this referral item? Seeing none, may I, or consent item, may I have a motion to receive the consent item? Thank you. Deputy Mayor, seconder, Councillor Marchand. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. We have no items for consideration. We have 5 referral items that are on the agenda. The first item is the municipal accommodation tax. The second item is the vacant commercial property options. Third item is review of bylaw 2013-12 related to leaf collection. Number 4 is review of open air burning bylaw, and number 5 is review of all terrain vehicles on municipal roads. Are there any items to delete or add to the referral list? Yes, Mr. Deputy Mayor, or sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Chair Vadabunker. I would like to add a parking bylaw review. Had many people in the community reach out regarding parking on municipal parking, and we've reviewed this at council several times. But I'd like to add that referral item for discussion when the time is appropriate. I know there's several referral items, and in my view, none of these are priorities. If they do, I've said, like, I like to see it or not, like this could be a 2024 item for, you know, wherever it looks like, but I'd just like to move that we review the parking bylaw.
Thank you, Worship. Was there a particular area or just a general review of the parking bylaw?
Yeah, I would say general review. You know, I've had some comments from people as early as 2 weeks ago. Curling Bonds built the curling club and just parking at the curling club overnight. And that we're prohibited from doing that from the bylaw. So just a general review, but specifically about that.
So overnight parking at the municipal facility?
Yeah.
Type thing? Okay. So from a staff perspective, Mr. CAO, Madam Acting Clerk, is that sufficient for the referral?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think we're good in terms of the deliverables, and we'll have some discussion at a staff level and then return back with some proposed timing. And it is the highway and parking bylaw 2012-23, which I think has been reviewed and amended on several occasions over the years. So certainly we can take that back and go through the process. Thank you.
So it's clear enough then. So, okay. So his worship is moving a new referral item, parking bylaw review, and the technical name. Is there a seconder to your Deputy Mayor? Seconds. Any comments or questions on adding this item to the referral list? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. So go back to the motion dealing with the referral list. At the Planning and Community Development Services section, endorse the following additional and existing referrals to upcoming agendas and staff. May I have a mover? Councillor LaRue, seconder, Councillor Waters. Any further comment on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. That concludes the Planning and Community Development Services agenda. Any comments from the media and the public? Yes, sir. Please go to the podium if you wouldn't mind.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Councillor Vadabonker, again for this opportunity. I want to start by acknowledging Mayor Rawson's earlier comment about thanking the public for their engagement throughout the process over the last few months in putting together the budget, and I appreciate your thanks for that. And as council knows, this is not my first time addressing the group. So my comments tonight really refer to the monthly municipal law enforcement activity report for January of 2023. And for those who attended the public budget meeting on 19th January at the arena, they may recall I made comments to the effect that if our administration were to send our bylaw officers out and check and enforce illegal parking in handicapped spots, we will have solved the spending side of the agenda real quick. And if you resolve the revenue side, then you've also resolved the spending side. And there was a resounding, for those who may recall, there was a resounding applause for that comment. And so that brings me to the activity report. And I just want to make reference here to a couple of things that stand out. And one was that on the line item called parking, there were 12 complaints in January of 2023, something to do with parking. My question is, how many of those 12 were for people parking in handicap parking spots? If nobody has the answer at hand, I can tell you the answer. It was 0. And I'm told by our staff, I'll hold it up because I made it a little bit bigger. Please note there were no disabled parking complaints logged in all of 2022. So my question was, well, why don't you just take the signs down then? If we have these laws and they aren't going to be enforced, then you might as well take the darn sign down. So there's two pieces to my wanting to address you tonight. And I'll admit right up front, I have struggled over the last week or more since this kind of came to my attention about addressing you tonight. I've come here, I come to all the meetings and I don't want to be seen as a constant whiner, a complainer. I'm not on some crusade. I just want to make our town, just like you folks, a better place to live. This one really struck a nerve with me. When I'm told that our bylaw for people illegally parking in handicap parking spots is on a complaint basis. Really? Somebody has to make a complaint? So what brought this to my attention? Well, I'll tell you. Back in September, I happened to be down in Brampton and I was looking for a particular address and I'm driving along looking for this address and I inadvertently, didn't even know it, drove through a red light. 6 weeks later, a letter shows up in my mailbox with photographs of me going through the red light. $350. Now, most people would have blown a gasket and said, how can I fight this? You know what I did? I said, good on them, because I just gave the city of Brampton $350, and I don't make this up because I checked it. Where'd my $350 go? City of Brampton said, well, you know, it goes to some of our recreational programs, you know, maybe free skating for everybody forever. And I'm saying, well, we're really missing an opportunity here. And it goes right back to the point I was trying to make back on the 19th of January. We're ignoring this. We're inviting people to abuse the system. Now, you just spoke a couple of minutes ago about, well, let's look at that parking policy bylaw thingy in a very general way. I say, I think that you better look at it in a very specific way. And we can have all the bylaws in the world, but if you're not going to enforce them, why even have them? And I would just suggest, if anybody is ever suffering from insomnia, read the 43-page bylaw on traffic and parking. It tells you everything, including the maximum size of a bicycle wheel. Don't try riding a bike with bigger than a 20-inch wheel. It's against our law. But we will allow people to take away the one small little dignity that we can give our most vulnerable community, our seniors and those people who are disabled. The only thing they asked was to be able to park a little closer to the door. And we're ignoring those people. We're turning our backs on the very people that some 10 years ago, somebody down in Toronto said, you know, we're going to make it a law across the entire province that every community has to have a number of handicap parking spots. And we've thrown that right out the window. We are ignoring a cash cow on the revenue side. And more importantly, we are turning our backs on the very people that you went to back in the fall when you were campaigning and you said, vote for me, I got your back. Well, now you're turning your back on those very people.
Mr.
Encourage us that if we are.
Mr.
going to
McEntee, if I
anything-
just, sorry to interrupt, but this section is called question period from media in the public. Questions are limited to active items on the agenda. So I think you asked a couple of questions.
Okay.
And now you're going on to making statements. So it's a
Okay.
little bit beyond
I'll
just the
come back to
question
one- I will
component.
Come back to my last question and I'll step down.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Councillor Vadaboncourt. I notice on the report for January that our bylaw department spent 39% of its time on patrol and 60% of their time in the office. What are they doing? Here's my question. What are they doing in the office for 60% of the time when they could be out spending more time catching bad guys? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. McEntee. Just for the benefit of members of committee, section did talk about disabled parking enforcement extensively at our section meeting yesterday, and just reviewed some history in terms of what we used to do as a municipality and what we currently do. And I know the director has taken that information back and is working with her staff in the municipal law enforcement department in terms of addressing concerns that have been raised with respect to disabled parking enforcement. The challenge for the municipality is that a number of the disabled parking spots exist on private property. So we have to enter into arrangements with private property owners to actively enforce disabled parking on private property. Some private property owners, such as the mental health center, Waypoint, they have their own appointed staff, so that's they enforce it themselves. But we're looking at our staff are looking at mechanisms that we could implement to address the concerns with respect to enforcement of disabled parking, and section plans to stay on top of this particular matter, and it'll come forward in due course to committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vadaboncourt. Moving on to number 9, section D is our finance and corporate services section. Turn the chair over to Councillor Durish.
Thank you very much. So we have, the recommended action is that the following consent agenda items having been given due consideration be received for information. Excuse me, I did want to declare a conflict on 9A, E or 1. And so we will remove that from discussion. We'll deal with the other 3 items, and then I'll pass the chair on to Deputy Mayor Rose to deal with the letter from the Township of Tiny, if that's okay with everyone. So the recommended action is for items 2, 3, and 4. And that is the 2022 annual water and wastewater write-offs, finance report 2023-03. And the number 3 is communications and social media activity report, semi-annual update, July 2022 to December 2022. That's the clerk's report 2023-03. And then finally, number 4 is the 2022 property taxes receivable report, finance 2023-04. Do I have a mover for those 3 items? Deputy Mayor LaRose, seconder. Councillor Marchand, are there any discussions on any of those items? Yes, Mayor Ross.
I'd like to move number 4, the 22 property taxes receivable report, for discussion, if I can.
Okay, so we will pull that from the motion to 2 and 3. Yes, so we will deal with 2 and 3. Do we have any comments or concerns about those? If not, then all those in favor? Opposed? It passes. So now let's deal with number 4, 2022 property taxes receivable report. Mayor Rawson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll look to our CEO maybe for a little bit of clarity. We had a little bit of a conversation about this, and if memory serves me right, Carrie, you've always presented a lot of great detail on these reports in the past. If memory serves me right, when we get into tax sale position, there tends to be faster repayment arrangements, and you and your team work quite hard to help people come up with all kinds of creative payment arrangements. And I think you're successful in that. And you seem to be very successful, specifically when we get down that path. One of my concerns when I'm looking at this report now is that the receivables growing, and it's growing really when I look at this from a 3-year perspective. I know when I was talking to our CO earlier, I believe we don't have to have a 3-year, we can make it a 2-year receivable, and we could start that sale process and maybe force people into an employment arrangement quicker to help our receivable and decrease the amount of time you're spending on it. So I'm just wondering if we can get a little more insight on that and some clarity on those pieces, and then what we can do, what tools can we offer to help support you with this process?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, Madam Chair. So in terms of the property taxes receivable at year end, we do an analysis, and in my report I touch on, but I will expand upon and clarify. So during COVID, I would probably say the majority, if not all, municipalities paused on their tax sale procedures, which you would look at the aged balance of your receivables. And there's a process that we follow in terms of providing final reminder, final notice, and then we actually engage with our tax sale consultant to deliver first notices. So that whole process has been on pause. And that's not to say that we've paused all collection procedures, but certainly the tax sale process, which is the one that really does trigger action on behalf of the property owner, whether it be, to make a repayment arrangements or to pay us out in full. Certainly mortgage companies get involved at that point because a tax sale registration is in priority to the mortgage company. So they will get involved and they will pay out tax arrears. Having said that, our year over year property taxes receivable have increased by 1% over last year. I did, and that was just as of December 31st. I did an update just to see where the receivable lands today, just in terms of collections that we've taken place so far in 2023. So we're currently at 7%. We're currently in the process of preparing final reminders for properties that are 3 years in arrears, working with those properties that are 2 years in arrears. And you did mention the distinction, Mayor Rawson, about the 2 years versus 3 years. Previous legislation was that if you're 3 years in arrears, we can proceed on tax sale process. The legislation has changed. We can now proceed with tax sale proceedings after 2 years of arrears. I have spoken to the North Simcoe and surrounding municipalities. Most municipalities are still using that 3-year time frame. That's not to say that you're not sending notice or advising the 2 years in arrears, which we are going to do through correspondence versus the official notices that the tax sale consultant sends out, which can be obviously intimidating and scary for a property owner to receive, but certainly that does get them to contact us and work with us. So having said all that, we are in the process of preparing reminders for 2 years in arrears, as well as final reminders that a tax sale is pending for those that are 3 years in arrears, which actually puts them pre-COVID. So they would have been in arrears pre-COVID, and these are the ones that are now 3 years in arrears, and these are the ones that we're proceeding on. And confident that once that process rolls out in Q1 of this year, that we will get repayment, we will get action on the property owners that don't respond to our reminders, and we'll start to see the receivables reduce once we get back into what I'll call our normal collection and tax sale procedures. That is an annual basis. So the fact that we paused it for 2 to 3 years you can tell by the increase in our outstanding receivables.
Supplementary?
I guess, thank you, Carrie, for all that. I guess a question for you and or our CEO is, do you want to just give us time and work it out with your treasurer friends and or Simcoe? Do you want us to bring something forward and have a conversation about changing that timeline? Like it sounds logical to me to move this 3 year to 2 year and start that process quicker, because I'm hearing you're recovering faster. And I hear we're just spending time to delay the inevitable. So I'm just, from our lens, is it helpful if we help that conversation and we do that? Do you want us to help with the referral, or you just want this as an FYI and just say, we're good? Like, how can we help if you need that?
Thank you, Your Worship, through you, Madam Chair. Certainly, we've had that conversation amongst municipalities as well as internally amongst our own staff. Because it was such an unusual past few years with COVID, I think we'll just keep that in the back of our mind right now. We don't necessarily need a motion, or certainly you can make a motion to direct us to do otherwise. It costs the property owner more money if we are going to proceed with tax sale registration. So it's harder for them to get out of the hole. So we use that property that's 1 to 2 years in arrears, certainly the 2 year mark, to work closely with those property owners before they get to those formal proceedings on the 3 year mark. And they're starting to incur the tax sale costs that the tax agent charges, and it gets added to their tax account. Again, we can monitor it as we move out of pausing our tax sale procedures and move back to our normal process. And certainly we can change our process to the 2 year mark if we don't see the movement that we expect to see downward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just support what the Director of Finance has said, in that if, we're very much aware of it. Carrie and her team have a close finger on the pulse on this. And I would suggest that if staff can continue to monitor this and continue to keep a close eye on this as we kind of get back into our regular routine, as she noted, in COVID, most municipalities kind of altered course a little bit. Then I think, if there's opportunity or a need for us to come back to council and ask for alternative support, if I can say that, then certainly we can, we'll take that into account and come back if that's okay with committee.
Thank you for those comments. Okay, so I do need a seconder for this item. Deputy Mayor LaRose. So I'll read the motion that the following consent agenda item having been given due consideration be received for information. All in favor? Opposed? It is carried. Now I will pass on the chair to Deputy Mayor LaRose.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're looking at 9A of our consent agenda, and the recommended action that the following consent agenda items have been given due consideration be received for information. We're dealing with number 1 only, and that is a letter from Mayor D. Evans of Tiny Township, Township of Tiny appointment to the Penetanguishene Library Board. I think if everybody will recall, the mayor sent us all an email giving us an update, but to get it on the floor, I'll look for a mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Vadaboncourt, seconded by Councillor Waters. Do we have any discussion on this? Seeing none. Oh, seeing one. Karen.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Is there a further update or anything we should be aware of?
No further update now. Other conversations have been taking place, and that's about all we're going to say about that right now. Seeing nothing else, I will call for the vote. All in favor? You can't vote. Teasing you. All opposed? And that is carried. Madam Chair, back to you.
Thank you so much. So now we'll head to the matters of consideration, and today we have 3. The first is dealing with allocation of municipal modernization funds update. It is regarding report finance 2023-05. And I'll read the recommendation, get it on the floor, that any remaining funds from the allocation of municipal modernization funds following the completion of all MMF projects approved be transferred to the corporate computer reserve at the end of 2023. Do I have a mover? Councillor LaRue, seconder. Councillor Marchand, do we have any discussions or questions about this item? Seeing none, we'll go to the vote. All in favor? Opposed? It is carried. The second matter is the Swift Rural Broadband Clerk's Report 2023-01. The recommended action is that staff be directed to prepare a letter to the Western Ontario Wardens Caucus in Swift on behalf of council requesting additional resources and project allocation to be brought to Penetanguishene through the SWIFT project, and that the mayor and deputy mayor advocate at Simcoe County Council toward equal access to good quality high-speed internet service for all properties in Penetanguishene. Do I have a mover? Mayor Rawson, a seconder. Councillor Waters, any discussion about this item? Yes, Mayor Rawson.
I just want to thank staff for their prompt work and getting this on the agenda. I appreciate it. I know Deputy Mayor and I have already talked to CEO Aiken at County about this, about getting this on the SWIFT agenda. So it's a priority, and members in our community that don't have access to internet, this is a priority for us. So thank you for staff for making this priority and getting it on the agenda. Thank you.
Yes, Deputy Mayor Gilbert.
Just on that as well, when we were at county council did appoint the warden Basil Clark to sit on this committee of the Western Wardens. So we are there.
That's great. Thanks for that information. We'll go to the vote. All in favor? Opposed? It is carried. The last of the matters for consideration is the post 2022 accessibility municipal election report, clerks 2023-02. The recommended action is that this report be received for information and that the clerk prepare a report to include the addition of traditional paper ballots as an option for the 2026 municipal election. Can I have a mover, please? Mayor, Councillor LaRue, a seconder, Councillor Waters, any comments or yes?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, I want to thank staff for promptly getting this on the agenda as well. I have a question for our CEO, or whoever he thinks most appropriate for this. When I read the report, it speaks about accessibility. And during the election campaign, I recall a couple times, and I'm thinking about Bayfield House as the example, where members of public didn't feel that the election process was as accessible as it was, that not everyone had access to internet and all the good things we did, but there were still people that didn't have access to a voting station who might not have the accessibility to get around. And I know that staff did go to Georgian Village, and there were people at Bayfield House, I believe that had 100 members, that they're wondering what do they need to do to fit the requirements to have a voting station there. So I'm just wondering, from an accessibility standpoint, what does that look like? And what do we need to do to provide accessibility for members of public at the next time of voting? And what are those qualifiers to make that happen? So thank you for that.
Through you, Madam Chair, Kelly's actually, as our acting clerk this evening, going to address that question. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. The council, as you know, the council of the day passed a bylaw which allowed for alternative voting methods, which was internet and telephone voting. And in doing so, that eliminated the requirement in the Municipal Elections Act for providing a voting location or a polling station. Although the act didn't require a polling station or a location for voting, the clerk had a polling station here in council chambers for the 2-week period prior to the voting day, along with a mobile poll at Georgian Village, like you suggested, and at Waypoint, actually. And so those weren't requirements of the act, but were in additions, but we understand that there were other locations that are possibilities, so definitely can keep that in mind for the next election. And I know that there should be another report that will be coming forward, so that could be addressed then.
Great, thank you. Any other comments or questions? If not, then, Councillor LaRue.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I also have to echo the concerns and consent of the Mayor Rawson, because I do know that I've had quite a number of residents after the elections that actually didn't vote because they didn't have access to voting. They didn't have computers, and they didn't know how to do the phone voting. And there were a number of people or residents that actually just didn't feel that they wanted to vote because they couldn't go to an actual polling station. So I think I know that the previous council, which I was a part, we did vote on the computer and phone voting only, which eliminated the ballot voting stations. But I think that from what I'm hearing, and I have heard after this past election, that it may have been a wrong move.
Thank you for those comments. Anything else? If not, we'll pass to the vote. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. We now have referrals for to upcoming agenda and staff. We actually have 4 items. The first is the Swift broadband. Second is the paper ballot consideration 2026 municipal election. The staff position of grants writer, and finally, the review of municipal tax rate as it relates to municipal services. So the motion reads that the Finance and Corporate Services section endorse the following additional existing referrals to upcoming agendas and staff. Do I have a mover, please? Councillor Marchand, seconder, Councillor LaRue. Any comments to remove or to add? Yes. Kara.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we can actually remove the first 2. I think Swift broadband's been dealt with. And I think the paper ballot's been dealt with the report tonight. The report speaks that I'll be coming forward with the next election reports. I'm comfortable to remove those 2, and I'd move that.
Councillor Whittaker.
Thank you. Just for clarification, I think the paper ballot consideration, I think the clerk was going to take the referral item back and bring a report back so that council, I think every election cycle, council has to approve the voting method. So I think there's actually an action that it would have to come back. So the Swift broadband, we did deal with the report earlier, but the paper ballot one, I think it has to come back. The CAO could comment.
Yes, CAO.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The intent here was and we've identified expected timing at Q1 2025. Councillor Vadaboncourt is correct that the intent is that there will be a future report coming that will consider the specific ask of paper ballots and provide that as an option with staff looking into it and giving a recommendation. So my suggestion would be that we leave it on as a referral item, but I'm indifferent. That report will be coming regardless, and we'll consider that. The only comment I might suggest is I think there was an indication earlier that the rec fee waiver item may be added as a referral item. I think we missed it on RCS, but it may be opportunistic to add it here on finance, recognizing it will be addressed and we can shuffle the location. But if that's the intent, then or we can wait until the next meeting. I'm indifferent. Just thought maybe that one slipped through the cracks. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. CAO, please. Okay, so we will leave the paper ballot on the list. We will remove Swift broadband. And did we want to add that other item as far as rec fees to be considered in the future, or ICE fees? Yes, no, yes. Okay, so then, let's deal with that item first. So we'll we'll deal with the rec fees, the ICE allocation fees. It's moved by Councillor LaRue. Can we have a seconder to add this to the referral list? Councillor Marchand. We'll vote on that. All in favor? Opposed? It passes. Now we will deal with the remainder of this. Can we amend the motion to have the Swift broadband? Oh, yes, pardon.
Madam Chair, just for
Yes.
clarity, you said ice fee waiver, but it was rec fee waiver. Okay, it wasn't the ice. Okay, just to be clear. Thank you.
Sorry, rec fee. Yes. Sorry, Kelly. Yes, Councillor Fedemokar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have an item to propose to be added. It has to do with dealing with our municipal modernization grant. We dealt with the report earlier. We talked about how there's a little bit of a surplus from that grant, and it's about $5,000, and it's to go into a reserve for future technology upgrades. And Councillor Waters and I were chatting about digital information signs. And right now, we have our sign in front of our Penetang Community Center, which has letters, and we have to change those letters and update it on a regular basis dealing with the Kings games. And we have the sign over by the water fill station, if you go on Robert Street West, that we update to advertise Winterama, public meetings dealing with, I'd like to suggest that perhaps we can explore implementing digital information signs that are controlled by a laptop, that you can change the information. And instead of our staff having to go out or contractor having to go out and update those signs, that we can do it just from a computer and it just comes onto the screen. Councillor Waters, I don't know if you had any other comments on that. You were the one that we were chatting about it, but did I cover it?
Yeah, I didn't know this was coming up. We did have a discussion. I currently own a couple of billboards, and I was looking into having them done for my own use. They would be similar to what you see out by the drive-in. Anybody goes by there.
So
They're easy to use.
Yeah,
So
so Councillor Waters is just to ask if you had any comments about supporting this in our referral list.
oh, just
The
floating it.
signs, yeah,
Oh, I
just
thought you wanted to
asking
know
about
what-
that. No,
what they were.
no, just
Nope,
asking
sure.
about if you support that.
I do.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just,
Referral item, yeah. So,
staff may have already explored it. I'm not aware. They may have. I just thought that if we have some money left over and we want to modernize, that would be something that we could explore potential.
Okay.
It does cost money and it's something for the future. It's just at some point, I'd like to have a look at
Okay.
it. Thank you.
so then we will add digital information signs. And that would be attached to modernization funds. It's moved by Councillor Fedemokar to add to the referral list. Do we have a seconder to add that? Councillor Marchand, all in favor? Okay, it's carried. So that will be added for the next meeting. And now we will return. Are there any other items that we want to add to the referral list? No? So then we will return to the original 4 minus the Swift broadband. And I believe we've had a mover and a seconder for that item. Is it okay if we amend that to remove Swift broadband and with the seconder also? Okay, so then all in favor? Opposed? It is carried. So do we have any questions from the media or the public? Seeing none, I will pass it back to our mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And we're going to adjourn our committee of the whole for February the 8th at 9:17 p.m. Again, thank you to everybody for your work and your participation on the budget. Tonight was a good night. A lot of heavy lifting work has been done. Thank you to staff for everything you've done. Thank you for everyone for your work.